to do a brief intro. We are actually heading downtown to Salt Lake City, where there will be a protest / rally / support type group meeting thing for Natasha Helfer. Gathering, that's a good one. Because Natasha was recently excommunicated by the Mormon Church. She is, you guys, if you followed us for a while, you have probably heard us talk about her. But if you don't know who she is a therapist, a certified sex therapist, and she promotes evidence-based practice and healthy sexuality. And because of that, the church thinks she's terrible and decided to excommunicate her. She is, in fact, not terrible. She is amazing. So we are headed downtown right now to the church office buildings in Salt Lake City to support her, and she will hopefully be there, which will be awesome, and a ton of the Exmo community is coming, so we're super excited about that. So stay tuned for more footage.
Okay, we are here. We're wearing different clothes because it's a couple days later now. We're just barely getting around to doing a little debrief about the rally that we attended the other day with Natasha to support her at the church office building downtown Salt Lake. So why were we attending a rally for Natasha Helfer?
Let's talk patriarchy, you guys. Okay. So this has been kind of, especially if you live in Utah and you keep tabs on Mormon news, you've probably heard about this the last few weeks. It got some national attention. But the gist of it is the Mormon Church decided that they were going to excommunicate a member of the church, an active member of the church named Natasha Helfer, who is a therapist, and she's also a certified sex therapist. She is amazing and has tons of experience, has done tons of research, and is extremely valuable to the mental health community, especially in Utah. She helps people specifically with mixed faith marriages, like if one person's transitioning out of Mormonism and one person, is still in, and she helps with the LGBTQ plus community. So in a sense, Natasha does a lot of, I feel like, damage control for the church, because the church does a lot of harmful things regarding the LGBTQ plus community especially. And so Natasha is an amazing resource for them and helping them work through things in therapy. And so she's also only one of a handful of actually certified sex therapists that you can go to in Utah. And so because of the profession, you are ethically bound to do certain things, which is things along the lines of evidence-based practices. And evidence-based practice, when it comes to things like masturbation, is that masturbation is normal and healthy and common, especially amongst adolescents. And that is contrary to the doctrine of the Mormon Church, because the Mormon Church would tell you that masturbation is a sin. It's technically breaking the law of chastity, and masturbation is something that needs to be repented of, and it needs to be confessed to a bishop. And if you have a problem with it or an issue with it, or if it keeps happening, then you need to continue to work with your bishop, because it can develop into an addiction of sorts, okay? And so Natasha's message is quite contrary to what the church teaches, but Natasha's message is actually based on research and evidence and what's healthy. And science, hello. And so the church doesn't like that. And so essentially, all Natasha does is respect the ethical boundaries for which she is placed in surrounding her work, because when you are religious and a therapist, those two things, like you check that, so you check your own stuff at the door, right? And so Natasha can't be in a position where she's saying, oh, masturbation is bad and sinful, when research supports that's not the case.
Which is a common thing. I remember having Sunday school lessons when I was a teenager. Not Sunday school, in priesthood class. And they were talking about how the world will tell you that masturbation is natural and it's okay to do, and that it's just not the case, that it is the work of the adversary to convince us that these scientific facts are against God's laws and will. So it isn't an uncommon thing, and many people will say, oh, well, the church has never taught me that, or things like that, but that is the official stance.
And this comes from experience, like firsthand experience of people that we've talked to, and I have been personally asked by a bishop if I was masturbating at a young age. I was under 18 at the time, and so this is kind of commonplace within the Mormon Church, and it's viewed as really negative. And so, especially when you're doing, one-on-one interviews with adolescents, they're not supposed to explicitly ask, do you masturbate? But it frequently comes up, like, too many stories of people who have been asked that by their bishop. And bishops kind of crossing the line in what's really appropriate to be asking a minor about their sexuality.
Yeah, and not only that, if they aren't the ones who are asking, which is what they aren't supposed to be doing, the bishops or any of the other leaders, stake presidents, etc. A lot of what is being taught on the subject in regards to the law of chastity and sexual purity and things of the sort is basically fear tactics to produce a confession. There's a lot of shame that is applied to those topics in classes and in, just the material that they teach, that it's kind of designed to get you to go to your bishop and confess those kinds of things so that the bishop is less likely to have to ask and pry. Which is also interesting because it causes this kind of rift where some people will be so tormented by their guilt that they will go, and they find it to be, and it's taught that it's really the only way to relieve that guilt is going to your bishop and confessing to him. So there's that. And then on the other side of the coin, it creates people who feel the need to lie, to hide it, because they're so ashamed. And I mean, it can kind of perpetuate a cycle that will go on for years where they are ashamed, but they can't bring themselves to admit that they've done this thing that is so horrible to anybody, including, spouses or whatever.
And especially when we're looking at teenagers, who Utah is currently, as of the last at least little while, is abstinence only as far as sex education goes in public school. And so they're not, I don't think masturbation is addressed at all. I would have to check that, but I'm assuming it's not. So if I'm wrong on that, someone can correct me. But
in Utah.
But this is the kind of perpetual shame cycle that happens, and the Mormon Church is also very, very against pornography. And so we kind of have this no masturbation, no sex education, and then kids, you know how adolescents are? They ask, who do they get their sex information from? If they're not getting the talk from their parents, which... In my experience with the students that I've worked with in Utah, a lot of them have not had that. They go to their friends, they go to the internet, and then things that they're seeing there might not exactly be the healthiest thing for especially a teenager to be looking at. And so that's just kind of this cycle that happens here. And so that's why Natasha Helfer's work is so poignant in this community, because she is a voice within the Mormon Church that's saying, no, we need to change our rhetoric on how we address this. No, we need to look at science. We need to look at evidence-based practice. We need to look at what's beneficial for these children. Like, adolescents need to know and be comfortable talking about these things and asking about these things, and we need to stop shaming them for doing something that's completely normal and natural. And so the fact that Natasha is a member of the Mormon Church and her voice in that community is really, really important. And people feel comfortable. Mormons feel more comfortable going to her because she's a sex therapist, but she's also a Mormon sex therapist. And so there's a level of comfortability there. And so she was given a disciplinary council.
A court of love.
Or they would call it a court of love, essentially for her positions on advocating publicly for healthy sexual practices, and, you know, encouraging leadership to maybe rethink kind of how they frame and talk about these things. And she went to her disciplinary council, and they wouldn't even...
Pause. She lives in Salt Lake City. They would not allow her records to be transferred to Utah, and they went ahead with the disciplinary council. She had to travel back to Kansas to be able to attend her disciplinary council. They would not allow her to phone in.
She had to attend.
She had to physically be present at this hearing.
And if you have a disciplinary hearing in the church, it means, you know, you're in trouble. Your odds of being excommunicated or disfellowshipped are pretty high. And so you're allowed to bring with you witnesses. They have to be members of the church. You can bring witnesses with you to testify about, you know, who you are, like, you know, what you're on trial for, essentially. And so she goes, she brings her witnesses. Her witnesses are approved by the church beforehand. You have to agree to not record the hearing. I think you signed something, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
I think.
I'm not sure.
You agree not to record anything because what happens in disciplinary councils is sacred and confidential, and they just don't want you recording it and putting it on the internet. And so, because transparency. Why?
Yeah, no.
And so she went to her disciplinary council, and she agreed not to record. She shows up. All her witnesses show up with her. Most of them do not live in Kansas, so they've already gone out of their way. And they go, and they won't even allow Natasha in the building because she won't give up her phone. They want her to give up her phone, which...
She had her notes on.
She had all her notes. She had everything, her questions, everything she had prepared on that device. And they did not tell her beforehand that she would need to give up her phone. That's not something that they regularly do. And so she was not prepared for that, and she had everything on her phone. And so they were kind of... I mean, they handled this extremely poorly from start to finish, but essentially because she wouldn't give up her phone, which I do not blame her in the slightest sense, because she wouldn't give up her phone, they wouldn't allow her or her, I don't think, or her witnesses, like her witnesses weren't even allowed to go in the church and use the bathroom. Mind you, all her witnesses are members of the church in good standing.
Which shouldn't be a bearing for being able to use the bathroom or not.
Like, hello.
They have to be members of the church to be able to be witnesses in that. But.
In that sense already. And so they won't even let these people come in and use the bathroom. Meanwhile, all these obnoxious people are sitting in the building, you know, talking presumptuously about Natasha. And they essentially decide that they're kind of at an impasse and nothing's going to happen. And so the people who gathered, there were people who gathered at her disciplinary hearing just to support her, like, just to give her community and let her know that she's supported and just to be there. And so they hung out. Like, it wasn't a protest. It wasn't anything of the sort. They were just hanging out, like, in the parking lot, just waiting for Natasha to come out, just being there for her. And instead of kindly asking them to leave if the church was uncomfortable with them being there, they called the police and had the police escort her community members, friends, family, relatives off the property, which is just choice.
Icing on the cake.
Icing on the cake. They handled that really well.
We're talking adult men not being able to walk out
and be like, hey,
ask a bunch of I can't even call them protesters. Just
they're not protesters. They were just hanging out.
They weren't even near the church. They were beyond the church parking lot in a little
under a little
pavilion that was on the church property. So there are at least 15 of them that any one of them could have just walked out and been like, hey, we're not doing anything. Can you guys get off the property? No. But instead, they decided to act like a bunch of cowards. I will stand behind that word. They just got the police to come in and kick everybody out.
The police car, they got 2 police cars to show up, and everybody had to leave. At least 2 that I saw from the video. And this is all documented on video because some people were recording. And so nothing happens. Like, her disciplinary council that she had prepared for essentially did not happen. And so it was presumed that they probably
did it without her.
Have this council without her, which can happen.
After everybody had gotten there.
And so she doesn't hear anything for a few days and then eventually gets, I think it was an email. Was it an email or was it a letter? I don't remember.
I don't know. It might have.
She gets one or the other from the stake president in her Kansas stake, who had said that they held the disciplinary council without her. They took in, like, they consulted with the people that were present at the time, and they decided that she needed to be excommunicated. And so in the Mormon Church, excommunicating is you're getting the boot.
Goodbye.
You can still go to church activities, but you've got, like, major restrictions on your membership. So you can still, like, if you really wanted to, you could still go participate in a church service, but you're not going to be allowed to have callings. You're not going to be allowed to speak. You're not going to be allowed to
say prayers.
Things
of that nature.
And so that's kind of the gist of excommunication. So she gets this notification that she's, excommunicated. A lot of, obviously we can't speak for Natasha, but if you go find her on social media, she's on Facebook, she's on Instagram, you can read kind of her thoughts about the whole process and what it meant to her. It was like very emotionally intense, and I would say very devastating for Natasha. She truly wanted to remain a member, and we're not here to judge whether or not she should continue to be a member. There's a lot of people that are like, oh my gosh, like, well then why wouldn't she just leave? And I'm like, we're not here to tell somebody else's story. We're here to share the legit stupidness of the legit stupidity of the Mormon Church and deciding to excommunicate someone who's, 1, helping clean up their mess, and 2, is just an overall great person who's doing great things in the Mormon community. And so we're not here to tell, like, Natasha's side of that piece. You can, again, go find her on social media. She's amazing. You'll learn a bunch from her, I guarantee. And so the rally was organized by someone on TikTok named Exmo Mom. And she doesn't even live in Utah, and she decided to organize this rally just in support of Natasha. And so we all went down to the church office building, church headquarters, which is in downtown Salt Lake City. And so we all went down there. We had signs. We did chants. We stood outside. The church office building where all the high-ups work. And at the end of our little group rally hang type thing, Natasha was there as well, which was great. And at the end of our group time rally thing, at the end, the whole point was, one of the important parts was Exmo Mom had created a petition that many, many people had signed, asking to reconsider and appeal Natasha's excommunication. Now, when you get excommunicated, you can go through an appeal process. So you can appeal that decision up to the First Presidency, the head of the church. Natasha did choose to do that. And so she did, at least from my knowledge at this point, has initiated the appeal process. I don't know where that sits currently. But we also, Exmo Mom created that petition that many of us signed to encourage the First Presidency to reconsider, excommunicated her and to allow her to retain her membership. And so Exmo Mom had organized with someone from the church office building to be able to drop off this petition to them or have them come pick up the petition. And so towards the end of our little support group rally thing, she called that contact that she had and let them know, I'm here, I've got the petition, you know, do you want to come out and get it? Do you want me to bring it to you? What's the situation? And in no surprising fashion, they decided that they were not going to make themselves available for this, and they were going to essentially force, I mean, they put it back on ex-mom, essentially. Mm-hmm. They told her that she could mail it
to the first presidency.
To the first presidency for their consideration. And she was like, I don't live here. I came all the way here from out of state. Like, I would just like to be able to drop it off. So she was just going to go into, or have someone go into the front desk, drop it off at the front desk. By the time we had gotten around to it, the building was locked.
I think it was already.
Which
the church administration building.
Neither here nor there. But we left a petition. We left one of the petitions on the door of the church office building, sort of as a symbolic decision.
Yeah.
And so again, just no accountability. Like, this was previously arranged and previously committed to, that this person would be there to receive the petition in his hands or her hands or whoever it was. And shockingly, they wouldn't come. And so none of us were really surprised by that. It was just another example of the church not handling these things, in my opinion, in the smartest way.
We're a bunch of dummies.
Like, honestly, it wouldn't have been that hard to just come out, like, and there was a group of us, maybe probably 50 of us. And so, and we were not hostile by any stretch of the imagination. Like, we were all just hanging out. And so it would not have been that hard to walk up to ex-mom and just grab the petition and go back into the office building. But I don't know why I'm surprised. So that's kind of the gist of the Natasha Helfer protest. And we wanted to do protest, rally, support group, whatever you want to call it. And we wanted to talk about this to kind of bring continued attention to this because, you know, I don't know where they are in the appeal process, but this is still ongoing. This did get national attention. The New York Times reported on it.
I don't know if the protest did, but
not the protest, but her excommunication. And so this has gone pretty widespread, but I think it's worth mentioning because we have gotten a lot of questions about, you know, why and who is Natasha Helfer and whatnot. And so that's kind of the gist of why, and we're gonna stand and support people who are doing their best. And it's not even her job to clean up the mess that the church continues to create, but she does it, and she does it well, and she's an amazing therapist, and many people would credit her with saving their marriage, saving their lives. Like, this is an incredible person that really could have been an asset to the Mormon Church if they would have used her advice appropriately.
Not just saving their marriage or their life, but I mean, it's not just hyperbole to say that. But really, there are people, because of this toxic purity culture, that consider mutilating their genitals just to have an escape from this addiction or this, you know, natural urge that they get. So when the church is excommunicating people who are helping with those kinds of issues where people's marriages are being torn apart because of the toxic purity culture that they grew up in, and the sexual relationship that they have with themselves or other people, it sends a really bold message to the world that they don't give a shit about what's happening, the bad, and they're just going to keep on doing what they're doing unless they pull another Sam Young situation where they excommunicate her and then they make changes.
I'm talking about
Natasha. Yeah.
Okay.
With Sam Young, they excommunicated him because he was raising concerns over the
interviewing
abuse,
minors.
Yeah, and the abuse that will happen when men, priesthood leaders, are interviewing minors and
asking
abusing
things
that
of sexual nature,
abusing that power. So, and they excommunicated him, and then they made changes afterwards. So we're hoping that that's not the case, where it's just kind of spitting in the face of her and all the people who were supporting her just by saying no, go to hell.
We're not doing this, and then change our minds later.
Change their minds. We also understand, and everybody at the rally was in agreement, that us being there and this petition is likely not going to do jack.
We're aware of that.
We understand, but it's not about changing their minds. It's about sending a message.
It's about sending a message, yeah.
So it needs to be said that what they're doing is wrong, and they really need to reconsider and ask Sky Daddy if they can change things, because it's not sustainable what they're doing. And a lot of these problems are coming to light now because people are more predisposed to being able to go and talk to a therapist. There's more resources out there. I mean, there's the internet, and people are hearing about other people that these things are happening to. So it really is not a good look for the church to just be kind of going about it the way that they have been going about it, especially with the Natasha situation.
So yeah, that's kind of, we wanted to share. We wanted a lot of people, I mean, a lot of you don't live in Utah, and so or live like decently far away from Salt Lake City, and so we wanted to, we had people that asked us to record and kind of share, and so you could kind of see just a little bit of what it looks like, what went on, and so that's why we wanted to do this, so you can get kind of a glimpse for those of you who maybe wanted to participate but couldn't. And so follow Natasha Helfer on social media. I know she has a Facebook page and an Instagram. She posts on Facebook pretty regularly, I'm pretty sure. So go follow her, and then make sure you're subscribed to us, because you love us, right?
Of course.
And so make sure you follow us on Instagram. I post on Instagram, like I post stories about what we are doing in our lives and bitching about the church and things of that nature, like every single day. So make sure you're following our Instagram. It's at Jordan and McKay, same thing. And then make sure you follow us on TikTok. We do daily videos on there. I think that covers all our social media bases, right? I think that's all we have. Sure.
Sounds good. But we have some more exciting content coming up this week. Hopefully that we'll have up this week, and that there won't be too much editing to do. So stay tuned for that. If you're a fan of some other TikTokers that are in your face, kind of don't give a damn about anything, definitely stay tuned. We'll have something good for you.
We also have another video coming out with the Dad Challenge podcast. If you don't follow him, subscribe to him.
Yep. We are making a weekly thing out of that, so definitely stay tuned.
It's hilarious. He's amazing.
His stuff.
We have a blast. And then our video later in the week, we're thinking about doing a BYU horror stories episode. Yeah. So stick around for that. You'll want to hear those.
All right, but thank you very much, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, guys.